We'll get to that in a second. Yep. Here's Mike. Mike, good morning.
Hey, morning, fellas.
Morning.
So, you guys have said it a couple times, and then like on the fan pages and stuff, people talk about like the roster construction always, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not an NBA level coach, but I've coached pretty good level high school basketball and different things. But it doesn't really matter what pieces you have if your coach isn't willing to put the proper fit together, if that kind of makes sense. And I get the NBA, there's like egos and there's salaries and these things, but it's just really frustrating to watch and listen and read so much complaints about the roster construction when, some of these pieces should just really just be coming off the bench to like make fits better, right? You could make the argument the lineups would be better with Trey Lyles in the starting group with DeMar and Monk coming off the bench, or like a Fultz at point guard. And right, like you can, I just feel like there's things that can be, we're pigeonholed, like this coach and the previous coach, and whatever reason, maybe it's money, maybe it's contract and bringing DeMar here or whatever it is, these egos, but they can't make, like they have the pieces for a starting five or groups of five that fit and make sense. And I just see a ton of the lineups just regularly don't make sense. When we closed out with, Monk, DeMar, Levine, Murray, Sabonis, the starting group that has been a net negative for the entire time they've been here. And I watched them in as our like finishing group for the final 5-6 minutes. I just know we're cooked. Like that group doesn't work, but we just keep trying to make certain lineups work that don't. And maybe it's just, it has to work that way in the NBA unless you get player buy-in. I don't know give me some feedback with that.
Well, Mike, I think there's a lot there. Yeah. And I don't necessarily disagree with you on a lot of what you said. I think look, say what you want about Monty McNair in the front office and Doug Christie, but you're talking about a ton of basketball experience there, and they're all relatively sharp people. Now, I'm not here to defend them and say they're perfect at their jobs, but they all want to succeed and make money and be head coaches and GMs, so they're not going to purposely not do things. So when I look at a method to the madness, you talk about egos and contracts and politics and all that. I guess I would say, isn't that part of roster construction?
Yeah, I guess that's fair. So maybe it's like a lack of, I know some people dislike it, but that heat culture talk where it's like, hey, some of that stuff doesn't matter. And like the head coach is empowered to do whatever he thinks is the right thing for the team to win.
That's right.
Because GMs can definitely make bad calls, right? They don't see the product together. They're building it on paper. And then when it doesn't work, like in a culture like that, well, hey, that didn't work. This isn't working. So now you're going to come off the bench, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure that obviously doesn't exist here. And so maybe that's a difficult piece to work together. Does that make sense? Like the GM obviously doesn't know how everything's going to gel. He's working on paper. And now our coach maybe isn't empowered to make the tougher calls.
Jason?
Yeah, I mean, I think these are great points. I think there's so many external pressures, and as much as I think to your point, Mike, that let's use the highest paid player, which is Zach LaVine, and if the right decision, and I'm just using this as a hypothetical, if the right decision is to have him on the bench as a starter or at the end of the game, whenever it is, that's really hard to do. Even if that's the right one from the GM, from the coach, or whatever. There's agents, there's GMs, there's his own field. There's a lot of things in play, and that's easier said than done. I don't like that, but that's the reality of the way professional sports works. I don't think it should be that way, but it is that way.
You mentioned heat culture, but you have to remember too, again, we need to normalize, or I believe that it needs to be normalized to say this, because we say it about other markets and other teams. And as long as it's respectful and as long as it's got logic behind it, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying it here. It starts with the owner, and it starts with the culture. Mickey Arison is the owner of the Miami Heat. Mickey Arison has empowered Pat Riley to have absolute power over that team. Absolute power over the team. When was the last time you heard Mickey Arison talk? When was the last time you saw Mickey Arison out in public, other than his cruise ships?
Well, it helps when they've also had a ton of success.
That's right. And I think those things are connected. I think it's a chicken and egg. You're having success because of that at the top, but also the success feeds into that at the top. So you have to conclude one of and only one of two things, I believe, Mike, or a combination of both. Either Monty McNair is not very good at his job, or Monty McNair and Vlade Divac and Pete D'Alessandro have not been empowered to be very good at their job. I don't think this is all Vivek's fault. I don't think it's 100% Vivek's fault, but I do believe that until he decides to leave basketball operations in its entirety and allow the GM to have full empowerment, we read Sam's article that said Monty didn't want to fire the coach, and that has not been rebuffed, whether privately or publicly. And I've asked privately, it is not. That is what happened. So that is proof. That is proof positive that at least in one massive personnel move, whether you agree with Brown being fired or not, I think he should have been. I'm more concerned with the GM not being empowered to either keep or fire the head coach. And by the way, if we had Monty in right now tied into with truth serum injected into his neck, for all we know, Monty's not an idiot. For all we know, Monty would say, yeah, stupid. I get that Mike Brown wasn't working, but I got to think two steps ahead, which is the De'Aaron Fox thing. And it wasn't worth it to me at the time to fire Mike Brown, explode the De'Aaron Fox thing, and then get pennies on the dollar. We have to allow for that possibility. We can't, though, Mike, have a true analysis of this team because we don't know what's going on within the team politically. And unfortunately, we have a percentage of our fan base, an ever shrinking one, that doesn't want to hear it. They don't want to read the reports. They get on Sam for bringing it up and get on me or whoever for being doomers. It's like, guys, we got to take the blinders off. You have to put sunlight on it to disinfect it.
Yeah, and I think to compound that a little bit, like if the GM's not empowered, the head coach is not empowered, that's and right. now you're really cooked, and it's like a they talk about the players running it, but then it's like this direct link from players to owner because I'll just say it, maybe feel like he wants to be cool and sit courtside with some of them or whatever it is. Like, yeah, if your whole middle chunk, like where every probably successful organization has GM and head coach very empowered, and you're just like lacking in that area, it's going to be a big problem pretty much your entire run until that's changed.
Appreciate it, Mike. Thank you. This is supposed to be an A segment, and we'll get to that a little bit next. Long standings watch. I guess I would ask this, and I'm being honest here. I'm not trying to be a snarky guy. Is other than the Al Davis Raiders, is there an example of an owner being involved in decisions for a sports team with them having a sustained level of success? And by the way, Al Davis was an absolute disaster at the end, but I have to give him credit for. I'm just thinking.
I don't know enough about. Did Robert Kraft? It feels like a lot was left for Belichick, but I don't know. I don't know
because Belichick ran both sides.
Yeah, I don't know.
Jerry Jones certainly not. I don't know. It's something to think about. Maybe, honestly, there might be an example. Other than Al Davis in the 70s and parts of the 80s. We'll take a break. When we come back, standings watch next.
You never know what you might hear when listening to a Sacramento Kings game.
Out of Keegan, going for another triple. Man, is he feeling it. Keegan, can he do it? Yes, there's number 11, Keegan Murray. Keegan steps back. He just knocked down his 12th three-pointer. The Kings franchise